There's something that's rarely said. But if you observe long enough, you begin to notice it. The people who build the most sustainable wealth are usually not the ones who talk the most about money. They don't showcase their strategies. They don't constantly update others on their progress. They don't feel the need to prove that they're doing well. They are fairly quiet. And in a world where everyone is encouraged to perform, to move fast, to stand out, that quietness is often misunderstood. Quiet people are often seen as slow, as lacking ambition, as standing on the sidelines. But reality usually moves in the opposite direction. Quiet people aren't silent because they don't care. They're quiet because they don't need to react to everything around them. They don't make decisions just because there's pressure to keep up. They don't buy more simply to feel like they're moving forward. They don't change plans every time a new trend appears. Their quietness isn't passive. It's selective. Selective about information. Selective about emotion. And most importantly, selective about when to act. While many people spend energy signaling success, quiet people spend energy building it. They're less pulled into invisible comparisons, less triggered by other people's wins. And as a result, they make fewer reactive financial decisions. Quiet wealth doesn't see quietness as a lack of drive. It sees it as the ability to not let the outside world dictate your pace. When you don't need to speak constantly, you have more space to observe. When you're not caught in the noise, you have time to think clearly. And when you're not reacting, you can choose. That's the first foundation that allows quiet people to often build wealth faster. Not because they're smarter, but because they make things harder for themselves far less often. And from that foundation, everything else begins to form. Every financial decision carries an emotional context behind it, whether we notice it or not. When the environment is loud, the brain is forced into constant reaction. News, social media, success stories told in ways that make everything feel more urgent than it really is. In that environment, very few decisions are made calmly. People surrounded by noise often don't spend because they truly need to. They spend to keep up. To keep up with a pace defined by others. To keep up with an image of progress that gets amplified every day. A new trend appears, and the feeling of falling behind follows immediately. Not because of a lack of money, but because there's no quiet space to evaluate. So decisions get made too quickly, not from reasoning, but from reflex. Quiet people are rarely in that state. Not because they're immune to comparison, but because they place themselves less often in environments that constantly trigger it. Less noise means fewer false signals. Fewer false signals mean fewer emotionally driven decisions. They don't need to prove they're doing well. They don't need to buy more to feel secure. They don't need to change direction just because someone else took a different turn. Their silence creates a psychological buffer. That buffer allows them to pause before reacting. And that pause is exactly what helps them avoid many costly mistakes. Quiet wealth recognizes that most financial mistakes don't come from bad math. They come from doing math in an emotionally activated state. Buying out of anxiety. Investing out of fear of missing out. Spending just to make discomfort go away. Those decisions are rarely wrong immediately. They become wrong over time. Quiet people have an advantage because they let time work in their favor. Not by making smarter moves, but by avoiding unnecessary ones. Fewer decisions, but clearer ones. While many people exhaust themselves constantly monitoring their financial lives, quiet people allow things to run in the background. They don't need to act all the time to feel safe. And because of that, they rarely need to undo mistakes. Silence doesn't make them wealthy faster because it creates special opportunities. It makes them wealthy faster because it removes many of the mistakes others have to pay to learn. In finance, sometimes the biggest advantage isn't doing more. It's not letting noise decide for you. Quiet people rarely try to make money move faster. They don't chase big leaps. They don't look for dramatic breakthroughs. And they don't feel the need to constantly optimize every decision they've already made. Instead, they let time do the heavy lifting. While many people feel uneasy if they're not holding some big decision, Quiet people feel comfortable with steady rhythm. They understand that most real progress doesn't come from rare jumps, but from small actions repeated long enough. Not every month needs a new strategy. Not every year needs a pivot. And not every day needs visible improvement. Quiet wealth treats consistency as a form of intelligence. Repeating the same saving behavior. Investing regularly, even when progress looks slow. Keeping what works instead of breaking it just because impatience shows up. It sounds simple. And precisely because it's simple, many people ignore it. We live in a culture that worships speed. Everyone wants results early. Everyone is encouraged to get ahead, anticipate, optimize. But the truth is, most financial mistakes happen when people try to force a natural process to move faster than it needs to. Quiet people don't fight slowness. They cooperate with it. They accept that for a long time, progress will look unimpressive. Balances grow slowly. Momentum isn't obvious. There's nothing to show off. And that's exactly when the advantage is being built. Wealth compounds faster when decisions are boring and consistent. Boring doesn't mean careless. It means stable. Every boring decision removes another variable. Every time you don't change strategy, the system gets more time to work. While others constantly adjust, quiet people allow the process to complete. They don't interrupt just because results aren't visible yet. They don't doubt just because progress doesn't feel fast enough. They understand that compounding doesn't reward impatience. It rewards those who don't break it halfway. Their patience isn't loud. It's not clenched teeth endurance. It's calm confidence in doing the right thing, even without immediate proof. And when results finally appear, they often look sudden. But only the person inside the process knows that speed was built from many slow days. Quiet people don't win because they move faster. They win because they don't slow themselves down with unnecessary decisions. They let time do its job. And that's a strategy very few people are patient enough to follow through. Quiet people often possess an advantage that's rarely mentioned in conversations about money. They protect their nervous system. Not because they're detached, but because they don't let every external fluctuation trigger an internal reaction. In finance, many bad decisions don't come from lack of knowledge. They come from stress, from fear, from a nervous system pushed into defense mode. When emotions are activated, the body wants immediate action. Escape. Fix. Do something to make discomfort disappear. And in that state, patience is rare. Quiet people place themselves less often in environments that constantly trigger survival reflexes. They don't track financial news by the hour. They don't let crowd emotion dictate their heartbeat. They don't turn every small movement into an emergency. Over time, this creates a massive difference. When markets fluctuate, stressed people sell to feel safe. When plans hit minor friction, they change strategies to soothe anxiety. When results lag, they question the entire process. Quiet people don't rush when their body is tense. They understand that strong emotion is a signal to notice, not an order to obey immediately. A calm nervous system allows one more pause. And that pause prevents many decisions others later regret. A calm nervous system is an underrated financial advantage. Not panic selling. Not changing plans over temporary discomfort. Not making major decisions while mentally unsettled. These things sound small, but compounded, they matter enormously. Because long-term finance doesn't reward fast reactions. It rewards stability. Quiet people understand that calm isn't a default state. It's something that must be protected. They design their lives to reduce stimulation. Keep rhythm steady. Refuse to let money become a constant source of mental tension. That's what allows clarity to remain even when everything around them is chaotic. When you can think clearly while others panic, you don't need to be smarter. You just need to avoid doing something wrong. And in finance, avoiding big mistakes is often more important than finding perfect decisions. Quiet people don't build advantage through risk. They build it through emotional stability. They protect their nervous system. And over time, that protects their wealth. There's a familiar paradox in the financial journey. But few talk about it gently enough for those moving slowly to feel at ease. The people who build the most sustainable wealth are often the ones you notice the least. They don't showcase progress. They don't explain their choices. They don't constantly announce that they're on track. Not because they have nothing to say, but because they don't need to be seen while the process is still unfolding. Quiet wealth builders understand that most value is created before there's anything to prove. The early years often look like nothing is happening. Income grows slowly. Assets feel insignificant. Life looks mostly the same from the outside. And during that time, it's easy to feel behind. Someone buys a house. Someone upgrades their car. Someone levels up. Quiet wealth doesn't deny that feeling. It simply reminds you, what's happening internally rarely moves at the same pace as what's visible externally. Real wealth grows in unlit spaces. No spotlight. No applause. No immediate feedback. It accumulates through small decisions repeated long enough to become invisible. Through not upgrading too soon. Through not changing direction out of impatience. Through letting systems run quietly in the background, day after day. That's why when results finally appear, they often look sudden. As if everything clicked overnight. As if someone discovered a secret. But nothing was sudden. The accumulation just reached a size where it could finally be seen. Loud success is noticed early. Quiet wealth is noticed late, but lasts longer. Loud success gets attention the moment it appears. But it also demands constant validation, pressure, and proof. Quiet wealth doesn't. It doesn't need daily confirmation. It doesn't depend on external approval. And that's why it lasts. If you're moving slowly, if there's nothing to show yet, if your progress looks ordinary, that doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It likely means you're exactly where quiet wealth always begins. Not loud. Not obvious. But growing, little by little. In a way only time can confirm. And when the moment comes to be seen, you won't need to explain. Because the results will speak for themselves. There are many ways to talk about money, but not all of them lead to peace. Quiet wealth doesn't promise speed. It doesn't create pressure to get rich fast. And it doesn't ask you to become someone else just to keep up. It simply reminds you that building wealth doesn't have to be loud. When you reduce noise, you reduce costly decisions. When you keep a steady rhythm, you give time the chance to work for you. And when you protect inner calm, you avoid mistakes others spend years repairing. If your journey feels slow, it doesn't mean you're falling behind. You may simply be laying the foundation, the part few people see. But everything else depends on. Quiet wealth grows before it's recognized. And when it appears, it doesn't need to explain itself. If this piece made you feel lighter, take a moment to like and share. It helps this message reach others who are also moving slowly. And if you want to keep building wealth in a calm, sustainable way that fits your own rhythm, subscribe to the Quiet Wealth channel. We're not in a rush. We're going far.